Hey guys, today we will talk about the 7 unbearable phobias. Everyone has a fear of some sort, but not all of us suffer from the type of pathological fear called a phobia. Some phobias are well known, for example fear of being in an open area or in a large crowd, and the fear of death. I think we can all relate to the latter. There are other phobias that are just plain bizarre. This list, however, is devoted to those phobias that seem inherently unbearable. While perusing the list, let's keep in mind that there are real people suffering from these phobias. Understanding the phobias themselves will allow us to understand, and sympathize with, the tribulations of the sufferers. But before that, I want you to please subscribe the channel if you haven't yet, and like and share the video for more entertaining and interesting videos. So, let's get started. Ambulophobia. The fear of walking or standing. Imagine the implications of such a fear. The mere thought of standing or walking around fills you with utter terror. How in the world do you live a normal life? You certainly can't travel around in a motorized chair all the time. Unfortunately for ambulophobes, human flying has not yet been achieved, either. It would seem that an individual suffering from this devastating phobia would be forced to confront their fear many, many times, every single day of their life. That doesn't sound like fun. Decidophobia. The fear of making decisions. As you can see, some phobias have profound psychological consequences. If someone is deathly afraid of making a decision, then how do they go about life? Do they instruct others to make a decision for them? Isn't that a decision in itself? Decidophobes must be in a constant state of mental flux. As long as they contemplate a decision, they shouldn't experience fear. It's the act of actually making the decision that terrifies them. This essentially means that any sort of personal interaction with the world requires a decidophobe to overcome traumatizing fear. Epistemophobia. The fear of knowledge. What? The fear of knowledge? Indeed. No school. No education. No introduction to any new facts of any sort. Developing epistemophobia is akin to placing a cognitive cap on your development. You can't learn anymore, unless you're willing to withstand unrelenting terror throughout the entire process, which would obviously impair your ability to even comprehend the new material in the first place. Acousticophobia. The morbid fear of sounds, including your own voice. We are now moving into the territory of even more bizarrely limiting phobias. How does one live a normal life as an acousticophobe? Do you live in a soundproof room? Do you walk around with earplugs? Do you convince a doctor to surgically make you deaf? These all sound like rather drastic decisions, but the other alternative is not very promising. Go through life and be horrified by any random noise, whether it's the slight buzzing of a nearby house effley, or the distant rumbling of thunder, or the roar of a passing vehicle, or even your own voice. And even if you tried to shield yourself from the terror by covering your ears with your hands, that wouldn't work. You'd still hear the blood rushing through your head. Somnophobia. The fear of sleep. Just like the aforementioned phobia, this one involves something that we all need to stay alive, precious shut-eye. But whereas one might be able to go a few days without food, and thereby dampen the effects of sebophobia, it is much harder to remain functional even after a single day of sleepless activity. I can't even imagine the overall physical and mental fatigue that this phobia causes. If you stay awake, you harm your body physiologically and undermine your brain's capabilities, but if you try to go to sleep, you're overwhelmed by fear, which may, plausibly, make it impossible to fall asleep, anyway. Certainly a horrible fear for anyone to have to deal with. Sebophobia. The fear of food. Let's perform a quick analysis of this situation. Food is required to live. Sebophobes are frightened by food. This means such people have two options: avoid food altogether, thereby killing themselves through malnutrition and dehydration, which is clearly a bad idea, or stay alive by eating food and dealing with bone-chilling tremors every time a spoonful of cereal approaches their mouth. Being a sabophobe means all the enjoyment you get out of the meals is wiped away because you'd be eating them with a touch of pepper, a dash of salt and a dollop of dread. Pantophobia. The fear of everything. At first, you almost want to laugh at this phobia. The fear of everything? Really? That's just absurd. But then the realization sinks in and you finally understand the gravity of this phobia. Think about it, the fear of everything. One source describes this phobia as a vague and persistent dread of some unknown evil. So, in a theoretical sense, a pantophobe can go through life in a completely normal way, enjoying themselves, except for the fact that they are haunted by an incessant, unwavering, relentless fear that some universal, esoteric sinister force is out there somewhere.